Report PL 010-18, modified work plan for official plan review to enhance opportunity for consultation. Councillor Huff.
Thank you. I wanted to make 4 points. First of all, I'm happy to see some additional events added, and I'm comfortable moving forward, recognizing that the schedule gives us the opportunity to revisit that again in June, I believe. I'm anxious to get to the stage where we're actually seeing a draft official plan and with greater clarity than reacting to possible areas of recommendation. There's just a couple of things that I would like to point out, not necessarily for action tonight or not seeking to do a motion, but I would like to understand what the drop dead date is for this council to finalize the OP reasonably within this term. I don't need to know that tonight, but I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. With respect to the idea of providing some additional information at events like the, it's not called a rally, but the event, the example that was mentioned is something that happens on the Parkway. I just want to point out that I think there's a couple of other events that happen in early summer, in July, that tend to bring together a lot of seasonal residents, most notably the Charleston Lake Association AGM, the TIA AGM, and the Tierra AGM, and between the three of them, there's literally hundreds of people who attend those events. And then the other point I want to make to council is that I think it's important that we recognize that there's very few items that have been brought to our attention that have controversy associated with them. The vast majority of things seem to be welcome. For example, the adjustments to settlement boundaries, moving forward with community investment plans, and any number of other things so I would like to get to the point that we narrow down and in a very informed way have a deeper discussion about what are the implications of things like waterfront development. So for myself, I'd like to know exactly what are the restrictions imposed already by the provincial policy statement, what are the restrictions that come to us from the United Counties of Leeds and Grenville official plan, what was in our current official plan, and then to just get right into it. What are the options if we're looking at going beyond those things that are already that we already have to operate within? If we're looking at going beyond, why? Let's understand the pros and cons, and let's see if there's options within that. For example, as opposed to a setback overall, we could look at percentage of shorefront, et cetera. So all I'm trying to say is I'm not sure that having consultations go on and on and on is the way to necessarily get us to the point that we have clarity around the pros and cons and complexities of the 4 or 5 specific issues that are controversial. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Councillor Jackson and Councillor Leakey.
Well, very clearly I disagree with just about everything Councillor Huff just said. There are approximately 900 waterfront properties in our municipality, and they pay in excess of 30% of our property taxes. And to disenfranchise them by not including them in the consultation process, I think is a slap in the face, quite frankly. The revised schedule, and I'll go to point 1 of the revised schedule, it says the first draft of the official plan is going to be presented to us in May the 3rd. There's no seasonal residents that are going to be here by May the 3rd, or at least enough seasonal residents to constitute a fair consultation process. But even if there were, what they're going to be consulted about is the first draft of the official plan, not any preamble or not any plans that would be used to create a draft of the official plan. So we're already putting into motion our official plan, and we will be presented with a draft. And this particular point is one of my sticking points about the whole promise of increased consultation with those seasonal residents, is the fact that they're going to try and have to influence a draft official plan and not some of the recommendations that were provided to us at the last council meeting. As is evident over the last 24 to 48 hours from the email that we've been receiving from many of the lakefront property owners, and in fact I believe just since 2 or 3 o'clock this afternoon, I received 10 more responses from residents, waterfront property residents who are not in the community right now. So that probably puts to total about 30 that we've received collectively as a council, asking that this be deferred until at least mid-September to allow for a more fulsome consultation on recommendations, not on the draft official plan. There's been nothing identified to us as to why we have to rush this through. There's nothing been identified to us about timelines that were imposed upon us by the county or the provincial government. And so I keep in mind what the mayor so aptly pointed out last week, and that I applauded him for, is the importance of taking this slow and steady and doing it right, and including a major component of our municipality in the fulsome consultation process. If we don't, we will disenfranchise a large segment of our population that I think deserves more respect than we would simply by pushing this through. Thank you.
Councillor Leakey?
Well, I'm going to ask the planner, because I think we've got a stir going on that, oh my God, Moses is coming from the mountain and he's bringing the 10 Commandments and they can never be changed again. And there's not one of us around this table that know there's any truth to that. That's why we have all these flip and minor variants and zoning amendments, and I congratulate staff for knowing that perhaps there can be some amendments to reduce. I intend to go back to those people, and my question to anyone that says defer it is going to be why, what information do you need, and what on your property do you see in development in the next 5 or 10 years that causes you concern with the recommendations that are presented. It needs to be specifics. I also need for our staff, and that's why it would be good to have a draft OP, because it does have more specifics in it. I want to know, give me examples of 5 residential areas, of 5 waterways. Give me a bay, give me a flat shoreline, give me where we stand now, that if somebody came and said, I want a dock here, why they can and why they can't have it. And what is this OP going to do to that request? Because quite frankly, Councillor Jackson, I swear I don't believe you even can answer those questions. And I think it's very important for each of us. I agree. We need to know what we're signing up for in a final OP. And we don't have that information. But it's not fair for constituents just to say, defer it. Like, no, help us. What exactly is the particular problem for a particular property that you see would be repeated? And quite frankly, I don't think a lot of it's OP. I think a lot of it might back up to current processes. So you're trying to defer something, and it's not really what the people are concerned about. It's the current process today.
Councillor Lackey.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I guess the only way to get an answer to that question is to ask those people and give them a chance to give it. And I would suggest that I know for one, we have neighbors at the cottage from Vancouver who don't come up till June. There are several. We keep focusing on the river and the waterfront. There's several waterfront locations in all our lakes, the Rideau Canal. I think we're losing sight of the focus here. There's more than just river folk, for lack of a better term. Let's use the term waterfront, because that's all this township consists of, and the majority of them are seasonal. They need to be heard, and I guarantee you we have not given them a chance, because most of the people that can afford to live on the water can also afford to live down south in the winter. So they have not been a part. We did not ask them. We went to our local groups, whoever they are. We have a list of them. We didn't go out to the general public and say, please come, and we didn't use a date on the calendar that worked for the majority of the people.
Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Lackey. You hit it bang on the head. Councillor Leakey, you asked two questions you'd want to ask residents, and the first one was why. We've all read the email. You've gotten them all. And their answer, Councillor Leakey, is because you didn't communicate with us. That's why they're asking for the delay. Again, staff has not provided us any timelines that are imposed upon us. And so I fail to see the reluctance of this council to offer an opportunity for a more fulsome conversation with those people that have been excluded from this. We started this process in November of this year. All of the seasonal residents were gone. All of the waterfront residents were gone, or a majority of them were gone. As to what they're concerned about, they're concerned about, contrary to what Councillor Huff says, they're concerned about a lot of the recommendations in the official plan, recommendations that restrict certain activities on waterfront properties. For example, I currently have a fire pit, this is probably going to get me in trouble, 10 or 15 feet from the shoreline. I want to demolish it because it's falling apart. If I don't get that done before this OP passes, I won't be able to have a fire pit 30 meters or 15 meters from, well, that's what it says in the OP, okay? That's what the recommendations are. The consultants that we had said, okay, perhaps it's not worded correctly, and hopefully, thank you for nodding, hopefully that will be amended. But even still, the fact that it will be amended may not be something that I might be content with, but some other waterfront property owner might have concerns. You asked about what are they concerned about. This OP is going to tie the hands of our community and our residents and our landowners for more than the next 10 years. We can't predict today, when my deck falls apart, where the Conservation Authority or the Ministry of Health may say you can't do this or you can't do that, and compound that with official plan changes. So let's slow the bus down. It's not going to hurt us to delay this by a couple of months. And in fact, I would suggest it will build goodwill with our community when we can demonstrate that we're willing to listen to them. Thank you.
Councillor Maybe.
Yes, I do agree that the residents, all the residents need to have their input into this. We must delay it. We've got to get it right. These people need to have their voice presented, and that the biggest one that I've always heard is the shoreline improvements. Everybody likes to make their shoreline beautiful, and we've seen many cases of that. So we need to continue to let the people enhance their property, make it more attractive, and in turn up the value, and we have a much more beautiful place. But the residents on the waterway or seasonal need to be heard.
Okay, so I'm just going to make a couple of comments here. So in terms of speaking to the sort of the recommendations, so we've added the additional open house on the first draft now to Saturday, May 26th. We've added the additional information sessions. The other thing that I think that this council should note, I think, is that we still, so as the process moves forward, so I guess I find it hard to comment on something that doesn't exist yet. And conversely, though, it's been interesting for me, though, that while we've reached out to so many folks, and I've spent hours on the phone with both residents as well as the heads, some of the leaders of waterfront associations talking about the process. And yes, they would like their ability to consult and the ability to get their information through. It's been interesting for me, though, how I guess what was a torrent of comments about the initial recommendations have sort of dried up. I'm not sure if we normally receive every single one of them. You would have, or the staff would have come through, but is it just my impression? But it seems like since that meeting, we've had very few additional comments on the draft recommendations. Is that my interpretation correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So that being said, I think that one of the most important things we can do now, because now I think you've got, if I read every single one of those, I think I have folks on both sides of the one way or the other, I think, and the best way to categorize that. So I guess the goal next is that we need to have this draft official plan in front of us and in front of the residents so that the comments, because again, the only way we're going to gauge is to have a draft of the official plan that basically takes into account everything that you've received, everything that's sort of been, and then that forms the basis. The other thing too, I think though, that is important is that this group ultimately still has the opportunities to move dates as this moves forward. So if we determine as we move through the process, and again, like I know that I've registered my own personal exact comments. I would ask that if you haven't done so as council members, that you also do that as well. I'm not sure if every member of council has addressed every single issue that they have, and I would hope that your voice is registered along with everybody else's. But that being said, I think we have a couple of really important dates where we can come back and basically either slow the process down or determine that says, you know what, the additional consultations that we had in the month of June, and in speaking to heads of organizations of, basically water, both, again, right across the board, who represent waterfront and waterfront landowners, and that they're basically saying, as long as they have the month of June is something where they're going to be here and they're going to be able to comment. From June 18th to, from June 18th, July 5th is the sort of when the final draft would be, so that would allow the entire month of June. At the July 5th meeting, we have the opportunity, and I think at any meeting, as these meetings progress, we have the opportunity to say, okay, no, wait a minute, this needs to change, or this needs to be delayed. So I would like to be the most efficient and to allow our residents to have the best possible version of this official plan, is to allow this draft to get released, continue to follow this timeline with the caveat that says, you know what, if we decide that this is not working, and then truly the seasonal residents, or we have major issues with this official plan, we can put the brakes on. I think this is a work in progress. I agree, you know what, we got to get this right, but I'm seeing both sides. I'm seeing one side has provided significant comments one way, and so we have to have a balanced official plan, and I think this continues to move it forward, and it adds additional consultation. I agree with Councillor Huff that if we can even look for further consultation with some of these groups, that would be also a good way to move forward, but that's my opinion at this point. Councillor Jackson.
Thank you. I'd like to comment on several things here that you just brought up, Mayor. And one was asking the planner about whether she had received any more correspondence with regards to the recommendations, and her answer was no. And that's a reasonable response, and it's exactly what I would expect, because at the last meeting that we had, we informed residents that they were going to have a chance, as part of a more fulsome consultation process, to address those recommendations. And they're now, according to the schedule, they're not going to have any chance to address the recommendations. And in fact, to your final point, if you look at point 6, there are no consultation opportunities for our waterfront property owners / seasonal residents throughout the whole process until July the 5th. And then it's a statutory public meeting to look at the final draft. And I'm saying that in the context of, I'm saying that in the context of number 5 simply being not a public meeting, but a timeline as to when the official draft, the final draft will be released. Number 4 simply talks about new processes. I'm sorry, and I will be part of the Parkway Challenge, but I assure you there are not going to be any waterfront property owners, or at least a material amount of waterfront property owners at the Thousand Island Parkway Challenge on June the 2nd who are going to get some brochure that we're passing out. It's not an opportunity for consultation. It's simply an information session. I'm sure simply from my own website or my own social media site, they've already been made more than aware of what's going on with our official plan. Again, number 3, It's a meeting in May. It's not an opportunity for waterfront property owners to be part of the fulsome consultation. So again, the only opportunity for waterfront property owners to be a part of any fulsome consultation will be on July the 5th, and by then it will be to discuss a final draft official plan. Again, that's not acceptable. I simply don't understand what is the reason for not opening this up to a little bit more opportunity for public consultation addressing the recommendations, not some final draft of the official plan.
Madam Banner, did you want to comment on?
Sorry. I just was hoping to offer a couple points just in terms of helping to inform your discussion. One of the reasons that it was set the way it was set was in order to have this official plan adopted by this council and approved by the county within the term of your council. And the initial thought was to avoid the lame duck period, because in that period, generally municipalities, councils, in my experience, don't wish to make major decisions that are binding on the municipality for a number of years if they happen to be in a lame duck situation. So, which is the reason, and then as well, there's no meeting in August. So kind of all of those points play into the proposed schedule. I am hearing and seeing maybe potentially an opportunity for maybe trying to move and use June a little bit more in terms of the consultation. So we could still go ahead with having the May release of the draft official plan. I personally agree that it will be more helpful because there will be the details there. And as they say, the devil is in the details, so people can see exactly what's being proposed. And say have an open house, and I have to confirm with the consultants, but maybe move that open house to June on the first draft. That way we would still get it all finished, addressing the other concerns, but we would have a June consultation.
I think Councillor Leakey was next, and then Councillor Lackey.
First off, I do not believe, like, you gotta, in my mind, I'm totally understanding. I want to see the draft plan to give staff and the consultants the opportunity to incorporate the feedback that they received, which was loud and clear, into something that we then have the opportunity to review, discuss. I just don't think to say, well, we're just deferring it. Like, deferring what? And yes, having more meetings for what? Quite frankly, I want to take a look at what we've got, and I want to educate myself more in the specifics so that we do get it right. And at the end of the day, if we come, and I believe most of the seasonal will be available by the first week of July, we will know whether there's still, no, you haven't even come close, or this is livable. And so I don't believe that at this point in time and night that it is valid whatsoever to say some arbitrary, well, we're not going to deal with this until September. Like, I think we need to work very hard the next 2.5 months. And I think that's what, as a councillor, that's what I will sign up for, is to work very hard to get a lot more knowledgeable on what the issues are, and to hopefully help understand and agree the official plan. It's not going to make everybody happy. I get that. I'm willing to take that challenge. That's why I was elected.
Okay, I'm going to do two more, and then we're going to move on. Councillor Lackey, and then Councillor Maybe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to simplify things, if we look at point number 3, where we look at Saturday, May 26th, if we just shove that to the following month, which would be June 23rd, I believe is the Saturday, and then point number 5, which would be the final draft, rather than it being June 15th, again, we go to July 20th, which keeps it on the Friday. That may help appease many.
Councillor Maybe.
To my point, some of the issues that were brought up at the proposal, are they going to be reflective in the report as of now? Like, because they were brought up?
Madam Planner.
They will. The consultant is working on revising the draft recommendations report to incorporate the feedback that they heard at that meeting. I expect that will be released later this week or early next week at the latest.
Okay. Councillor Jackson.
I think the Director of Planning's answer to the question is, in fact, going to what I've been trying to say all along is we were given recommendations. We met, we discussed them. The consultant walked away saying she was going to revise them or change them or reword them, but we're not going to see what the recommendations are as recommendations. They're going to be part of a draft official plan. And this is where the process is flawed, is we're going to be moving forward with a draft plan, not looking at recommendations, not allowing our residents to take part in the process. And just because we all agreed that certain recommendations were wrong and whatever is going to be crafted in the draft official plan reflects what we had hoped, doesn't mean that's what our waterfront property owners are expecting. So again, I realize I'm arguing up a dead tree here, but my job is to support my residents, and that's what I'm trying to do.